It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Dancing around the issue, the government under pressure to act on rising energy and water bills as consumers prepare for a new cost of living crisis.
We've got some pennies to spare, but if everything keeps rising like it is, it's just going to eat it all up, and then you're on the poverty line along with a lot of other people.
A warning of full-fledged war in the West Bank as at least 10 Palestinians are killed in Israeli operations. A reset but no reversal. The Prime Minister pledges better relations with the EU but says he will not try to undo Brexit. Living in the shadow of fear after the Dagenham fire, we hear from those still living in buildings they know are not safe. A summer of sport begins its final chapter as Paris plays host to a spectacular opening to the Paralympics. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. The dying days of the last Conservative government were dominated by a cost of living crisis fuelled in part by rising energy bills. And now there are signs that the new Labour government will have to grapple with those very same issues, with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, under pressure from within her own party over her plans to means test winter fuel payments. Under pressure as well to provide clarity on her tax plans, refusing today to rule out rises in inheritance tax and capital gains tax. Today, the government held a meeting with energy companies about how to help vulnerable families this winter. Well, it followed an announcement by Ofgem last week that there would be a 10% rise to the energy price cap. That means that, on average, annual bills will go up by £149 to £1,717 from October. But the total amount of energy debt or arrears has more than doubled over the last 5 years, with over 3.3 billion households owed money to suppliers, demonstrating the problems that many people are facing. In July, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, scrapped the winter fuel allowance for pensioners who do not receive means-tested benefits. As a result, 10 million pensioners will miss out on the payment of up to £300. In a speech yesterday, the Prime Minister also hinted at looming tax rises to plug a £22 billion black hole in the public finances, but says full details will be laid out in the autumn budget. Sky's Lisa Dowd has our first report.
It is a chance to switch off and forget their worries. But at this disco in Wolverhampton, pensioners know their budgets are going to get tighter. Gas and electric bills are going up, and there's little affection for a government that's taken away the winter fuel allowance.
You just don't put it on if you can help it. It's a hot water bottle and a blanket is mostly what you do. And then it's not good moaning about it. You just got to get out and you just got to do it.
We've got some pennies to spare, but if everything keeps rising like it is, it's just going to eat it all up, and then you're on the poverty line along with a lot of other people.
Around 10 million pensioners who aren't on benefits or receive pension credit will no longer get up to £300 to help pay fuel bills. The Westminster government says they have to do it to save £1.4 billion.
It's a stark reality after the mess that the previous Conservative government have left this Labour government to inherit. It means difficult decisions, but without difficult decisions, we're going to face serious problems with our public finances. I will not take the risks that the Conservatives have taken previously.
But many vulnerable households are already in debt with energy firms, and those companies met with the government to discuss how they could help.
It cannot be tenable to have £3 billion worth of debt sat on supplier books and no clear solution to that, whilst also knowing that we've got hundreds of customers, millions of customers struggling with the high cost of energy.
Right, Jack, can you get Mum another bag, please?
One of those is Mum Nat. She and son Jack are coping, but her family can't take much more.
It's just costing way too much for everything at the moment, and like you say, you can't really cut back on anything else because your food shop's doubled at the moment. Like, what, it's food or heating, so you have to pick the food for the children, really, don't you?
Make sure we get through.
From October, the average household energy bill will increase by nearly £150 a year. Charities are worried about how many more will be tipped into poverty as the government tries to repair the country's finances. Lisa Dowd, Sky News, Wolverhampton.
And our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins us now from Downing Street. So, John, pressure on the Chancellor tonight on a number of fronts, it seems.
Two fronts at least, yes, certainly. Obviously tax, because of the threat of tax rate rises on capital gains tax and inheritance tax, and also on winter fuel, those winter fuel cuts, and the real pressure not just from opposition parties but a lot of Labour backbenchers on that. Now, up in Glasgow earlier, the Chancellor refused 3 times to rule out increases in capital gains tax and inheritance tax during an interview. 3 times she was asked. Each time she said, no, not going to say, wait for the budget on the 30th of October. Now, as for the winter fuel duty, well, there's a lot of anger from Labour backbenchers about that as well. And of course, coming on top of the increases in bills that we already know about. And there is a lot of pressure on the Chancellor to provide some extra help. There has been a meeting with a junior minister with energy companies. They're talking about a publicity campaign, though. That's all. And a lot of critics of the government will say it's all very well telling the energy companies to help people, but you're the ones that have made the problem worse with that announcement back at the end of July of cutting the winter fuel payment for all but the poorest pensioners. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, great political hero Gordon Brown, he brought in the winter fuel payment in 1997. It was kept all throughout the Osborne years, all the years of 7 Tory chancellors, and now it's a Labour government wants to just restrict it to the poorest pensioners. And there's one more tax that is being predicted. The RAC, the motoring organisation, and Howard Cox of the Fair Fuel campaign, they are predicting that Rachel Reeves in her budget on the 30th of October will end the policy of scrapping fuel duty. Now, that could mean another 5 or 10p a gallon or a litre on fuel. That's something that has been scrapped through all the Tory chancellors going back to George Osborne. So we used to hear the word austerity from George Osborne. Well, looks like we're going to get some austerity on the on budget day from Rachel Reeves. October the 30th, some MPs are predicting a Halloween horror.
John, in Downing Street, thank you. Well, we heard there about energy prices, but there could be additional pressure on consumers if water companies get the rise in bills they want. In its latest business plan, Thames Water today proposed a significant hike in average customer bills, despite widespread discontent about corporate profits and water quality. And wants to increase water bills by as much as 59% by 2030. That would see the average yearly water bill rise to £696 if it's given the extra spending allowances by the regulator. The proposal is well above Ofwat's proposal of a 23% increase. David Henderson, the chief executive of Water UK, which represents the water industry, said whatever the size, increases are necessary.
The idea that we can keep up with the population that's growing and a climate that is changing by squeezing ever more out of very old assets is not credible. We need to invest, and if we don't, we're going to have the system failing. We have had year after year after year of falling bills in real terms. And look, as I said, we understand that it's never a good time to raise bills, but if we do not do this soon, we are kicking the can down the road and it will be much more expensive in the future.
Well, to the Middle East now, where the Israeli military in Gaza said tonight that they had recovered the body of a soldier abducted during the October the 7th attack. But the focus of Israeli operations today shifted to the West Bank, where 10 Palestinians are reported to have been killed, and the Israeli government is warning of full-fledged war in the occupied territory. Israel has carried out near daily raids there since Hamas's October the 7th attack triggered the war in Gaza. Today, Israeli forces killed 10 Palestinians, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent, as the military appeared to launch operations in several cities at once. The IDF confirmed it had launched a military operation in Jenin and Tulkarem to, in their words, counter terrorism in the region. The governor of Jenin says Israeli forces have surrounded the city, blocking off exit and entry points and access to local hospitals. The IDF also conducted raids on Nablus, reportedly focusing on 2 refugee camps there. In Farah camp near Tubas, medics say ambulances have been struggling to reach the wounded after an alleged Israeli drone strike. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has this report and a warning that it contains images of the dead bodies of those killed.
Israel launched the operation in the early hours of Wednesday morning, targeting 3 towns across the West Bank: Tulkarem, Jenin and Tubas. Within a few hours, 9 had been reported dead and dozens wounded. A drone strike killed 3 in one incident. The IDF said that they confiscated weapons and explosives. When we arrived in Jenin, the roads were deserted. IDF checkpoints were blocking the main routes into the city. When we found a way in, the market, normally heaving on a weekday, was empty. Barriers were across the street to slow down the IDF. Everybody, it seemed, was staying inside whilst the operation continued.
We're in central Jenin, but this is as far as we can get. There's an Israeli military blockade up ahead. Beyond that is the refugee camp where most of the military operation is taking place, and also the city's main hospital. So there's been ambulances coming up and down this street in all the time we've been here. But the Israelis are not allowing us any further on from where we are now.
We watched the IDF stop and search ambulances and turn some of them away.
We were heading to the hospital to pick up patients. They stopped me, searched the ambulance and told me I wasn't allowed to cross. They told me that I could either wait here for patients to come to me or turn and drive away.
The head of the Red Crescent was angry.
What I'm hearing from the hospitals, they're not working. If this is the objective of the Israeli army, is stopping these hospitals from doing what they are there to do, they are succeeding. Hospitals in Tulkarem and Jenin are completely besieged by the Israeli army, not allowing anybody in or out.
Israel has been repeatedly carrying out raids across the West Bank for 18 months, often weekly. Terror attacks in Israel have been launched from Jenin and Tulkarem, but hundreds of Palestinians have also been killed in the IDF operations. The IDF won't say how long this one will last for, but the UN has said that it risks making a catastrophic situation even worse. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jenin.
The Prime Minister was in Berlin today setting out proposals to, in his words, reset relations with the rest of the EU. For now, Sir Keir and the German Chancellor announced plans for a treaty between their 2 countries that would cover a range of areas, from trade to migration. But the PM was keen to stress none of it is about reversing Brexit. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has more.
The red carpet rolled out for a new Prime Minister on his first official visit to Berlin, and in hope of a reset in relations. Here to turn the corner on Brexit and draw up a new treaty with an old ally, to forge closer ties on defence, security, migration and trade. Press in for a better result than his last visit to Germany for the Euros final.
Thank you for hosting yet another episode in English footballing trauma. I've been through a lot.
But the PM's biggest goal, to boost growth back home.
A once-in-a-generation chance to deliver for working people in Britain and in Germany. A chance to create jobs here and in the United Kingdom.
And his German counterpart, Chancellor Scholz, positive.
We want to take this hand which has reached out to us.
But with clear arse too, Berlin wants a youth mobility scheme. Prime Minister, you know you'll have to make concessions for a better deal. Do you acknowledge that? And specifically, will you allow freedom of movement for young Germans?
But we do not have plans for the youth mobility scheme, but we do have plans for a closer relationship between us and the EU as part of that, White said.
And Chancellor, can the UK really expect to cherry-pick better trade terms outside of the European Union?
The UK has left the European Union, but we're friends. We live on the same continent. And from our point of view, from our perspective, and we're of the opinion that there is reason to do everything in our power to improve relations.
Hard hat on at the Siemens Energy factory, the PM keen to do business. His goal to sign the new treaty with our biggest trading partner in Europe by the end of the year. Having warned voters back home that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better, Starmer's here in Berlin trying to inject some hope into his project with the promise of this big EU reset. But while the mood music is good, there's precious little detail about what trade-offs, if any, he's prepared to make to get the bigger prize of a better trade deal with the whole of the European Union. Starmer arriving in Paris to continue the charm offensive at the start of the Paralympics. But with the PM clear any unravelling of Brexit is off the table, it's hard to turn warm words into any real wins. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Berlin.
Next week, a landmark report into the Grenfell disaster will be published 7 years after the tragedy which killed 72 people. But this week provided a chilling reminder of the threat still posed by cladding on housing after fire ripped through a building in East London, with the Deputy Prime Minister saying that there is still far too much dangerous cladding on properties. One resident of a nearby block, which is undergoing one of the biggest remedial projects in the country, has spoken to Sky News about a life of anxiety in one of the UK's unsafe buildings. Here's our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter.
They've waited years for this, and it's a huge job. Putting right the new Atlas Wharf residential block in East London. With the scaffolding starting to go up, we headed to the 8th floor. So it's quite a view. You can see all of London.
Yes, and you can see all of the cladding problems in front of you.
It's not just cladding here, it's what's behind it that's been deemed unsafe.
Everything's coming off. The brickwork, the steel cladding, the insulation, that's really dangerous. So everything back to the internal plasterboard is coming off. So literally
Huge job.
Yes, it's probably one of the biggest jobs in the country.
Like so many people awaiting this kind of work, Karen was horrified seeing the flat fire on Monday in nearby Dagenham.
That was an accident waiting to happen. When buildings undergo remediation, they become quite dangerous. So I wasn't surprised it happened, and I suspect there'll be more. And that is frightening, especially if you're on the 8th floor and there's one escape route.
The Labour government has now committed to speed up fire safety work at homes around the country. Karen, how does it feel, this being part of this scandal?
The phrase as safe as houses just doesn't apply. Knowing your home could be the death of you.
Really, is that how you feel?
It's how a number of us feel. When was Grenfell? 2017? And there are buildings up and down the country that have still not been remediated. Yes, it's just starting to go up.
The residents here aren't directly paying for the work, but the toll on them is clear.
It's partly a relief because the work has started, and there's just dread at what the next 18 months to 2 years will bring.
That long?
Yeah. At least.
There's 151 flats here. The numbers of people waiting across the country runs into hundreds of thousands. The delays aren't just an inconvenience. The evidence shows they are a danger to life. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, East London.
3 people have been killed in a road crash in North Wales. Emergency services were called to Beaumaris on Anglesey shortly before 2:45 this afternoon, but declared the 3 dead at the scene. A witness said the collision involved a car hitting a pedestrian and then a house. Police are asking anyone who saw what happened to get in touch with them. Pavel Durov, the chief executive of Telegram, has been charged with allegedly allowing criminal activity on the messaging app. French judges have barred Mr. Durov from leaving France pending further investigation, but he has avoided jail with a €5 million bail. The billionaire founder of the encrypted messaging and social media platform was arrested on Saturday. Italian prosecutors are now investigating 2 British crew members on board the super yacht that sank off Sicily. Tim Parker-Eaton was in charge of the engine room, while Matthew Griffith was the crew member on lookout duty. Sky News understands detectives have searched their bedrooms and seized mobile phones. 7 people, including British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, who owned the yacht, died when it was hit by a severe storm a week and a half ago. The FBI has said tonight it is still unable to find a clear motive for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. They've conducted 1,000 interviews since 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks shot at the former US president during a campaign event on the 13th of July. Investigators say Crooks searched online for events for both Trump and Joe Biden and settled on the Pennsylvania rally as a target of opportunity. Now, it's a time of year when many of us have been tramping through British airports on our way back from our summer holidays. But unseen by the regular holidaymaker, there's been a dramatic rise in the number of people caught attempting to bring suitcases of cannabis into the country, often from jurisdictions where the drug is legal. The number has risen from just a handful 2 years ago to nearly 400 so far this year. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt has more.
She thought she'd got away with it, but her celebration drink was short-lived.
You're under arrest on suspicion of the knowing consent of importation of Class B with cannabis.
The look on Chelsea Allingham's face and then the handcuffs told the tale of another failed cannabis
I'm
courier.
just going to put handcuffs on you.
The smuggler, a Canadian aged 40, had brought 2 suitcases full of cannabis from Toronto to Heathrow. By this point, she'd already handed them over to her contact. But Border Force officers had detected the drugs, let her collect her bags and followed her to the handover. According to the National Crime Agency, there's been a huge rise in the arrest of cannabis couriers.
There's been a particular increase over the last couple of years. So in 2022, we arrested 17 cannabis couriers coming into airports. That was 136 in 2023 and 378 so far in 2024.
The NCA says most couriers are smuggling cannabis from countries where it is grown legally, like Canada, parts of the United States, Thailand and others. Buyers think they're getting a better product and are prepared to pay more for a drug that's illegal in Britain.
Actually, chemical tests indicate that the THC content is very similar between the cannabis that's imported and domestically grown. I think in part it's because the criminals are very good at selling it within the UK.
This month at Birmingham Airport, on one day, 11 British passengers from Thailand were arrested, then bailed. 500 kilos of cannabis allegedly found in their suitcases. Courier Chelsea Allingham was jailed for 10 months. The maximum penalty is 14 years. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
The Paralympic Games were launched in spectacular style tonight as Paris welcomes the largest number of athletes and participating nations in the event's history. And just like the Olympics, the opening ceremony was an al fresco affair, albeit with much better weather. Well, let's go live now to Siobhan in Paris, and a real sense of excitement, Siobhan, for what is now a massive event.
Absolutely amazing. We're just seeing those final moments of the opening ceremony of these Paralympics, the flame being handed from gold medal winner to gold medal winner, going down towards the cauldron, which will then be lit and rise in the sky, just like we saw above the Olympic skies around a month ago. But what an amazing spectacle. What a celebration. We know in the city here there are 215 athletes from Paralympics GB. We've been spending some time with some of them over the last few days. They are absolutely raring to go, particularly after the fact that the Paralympics in Tokyo were the COVID Olympics. It meant that they were held without spectators. This is such a different feel in the city tonight. There are people here willing them on, cheering on different delegations as they go through the city's streets. And of course, the fact that it's so close to the UK means that the biggest overseas contingents of fans at the moment in terms of ticket sales will be coming from the UK, which is another huge boost for Team GB. And really, they have no time to rest on their laurels. You saw in my report one of the para archers going to be competing tomorrow. Also, we're going to see potential medal hopes in the cycling, the swimming and the taekwondo as well.
Off to a glowing start already. Siobhan, live there in Paris for us. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by Kev Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Lucy Fisher, Whitehall Editor of the Financial Times. Welcome to both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Express. Its headline, fuel duty could be next in the tax grab. Telegraph, in fact. Back with that in just a moment.